All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews. And after a short hiatus because of a work scheduling conflict, we're back with more Agent Carter Season 1. We're covering episodes 3 and 4, Time and Tide, and the Blitzkrieg button. And with me, like last time, and for all of these, I have Agent Corrie Shoemaker from our Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan shows and our Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season retrospectives joining me as per usual. Thankfully, so to help me get through, it's making it sound like it's tough, but helping me honor this show that does not get enough attention. Also, like a lot of the pictures that I'm using now in the intro are because of her. Thank you for showing me that website. That was such a blessing because I always struggle, and now I can basically find whatever I need. For at least Agent Carter, anyway. I tried finding other stuff, but it's limited. But what they have, holy moly! So Time and Tide and Blitzkrieg button actually, I think, work really well as covering episodes at the same time. With the structure that they go right into between episodes 3 and 4, there's like no break. It literally just kind of jumps in. It feels like you're watching something like Lost a little bit, which just continues like a cliffhanger right into the next story. And even though there's new plot points and new beats, it's it literally feels like a long movie now. And so talking about Time and Tide first, right? Where we're coming right off of the events of the second episode, and Peggy has stopped right now the implosion that was about to happen with the truck full of nitramine. You've got that guy's body in the autopsy bay. You've got the SSR agents all looking into it, trying to find out what happened to this guy. What's with the scar? Why is a dead guy showing up here? And we've got Peggy and Jarvis digging into their characters a lot in this episode, especially Jarvis. This is a big Jarvis episode, and I really like that because the actor does such a fantastic job. But what we noticed right at the beginning of this episode was the code book that she pulls up. The inside the Shakespeare book is a code book, and I thought that was really interesting. And I know you have some things to say about the code book, so go right ahead and let everybody know.
I did, yes. I was so excited to see that when it first showed up in my first watch through of Agent Carter. It's kind of an Easter egg to what we're going to learn further on in the season about her past, and it's showing that she has a background in coding, which a lot of women did during World War II. They were conscripted or asked to join and use their abilities. Often these are women who are really strong in mathematics, and they would help with and work on decoding messages that were sent. And what I noticed is that obviously every chapter is a different type of code or encryption. So chapter 1 is called Enigma, and that's the name of the German coding machine that was used during World War II. And then chapter 2 is the Hagelin cipher, which I hope I pronounced right. And it was created by a Swedish businessman, and he invented the encryption machine. So if you just screenshot that quick little scene of the chapter, you can see so many different types. It talks about the Morse code, which of course we would all know from World War II is the main code they used to communicate. The Lamport signature, which is the precursor to the digital signature. You end up using 2 strings of numbers and then you pair them together. I'm not an expert in it, obviously, but it allows you to have a secretly coded message that is only used once with that code system. So it's often used, I guess, now in digital modern times, it's used to prove the ownership of a document. So if you had to send a document to someone and you wanted to encode it, you might use this method, which was, obviously used during World War II. And then authorization codes, cryptographic nons. vectors, different types of signatures. So we know from just a little glimpse into Peggy's life that she is a coder. She originally was a coder. And later on, we'll learn a little bit more about that. I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
That's fine. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, that's what we, like, that's a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing. That's what I love about these kind of shows, and why it's so fun to really pay attention is they do reward you with things that may not seem important, but if you're really into the backgrounds of the characters, you'll be able to figure out these things by paying attention. And that code book, as soon as I saw it, I was like trying to like freeze frame and look for every little thing that was in there, because it might mean something. I remember back in the day when the very first couple of X-Men movies came out, there was like one shot of a computer screen once, just a computer screen, and it was on there for like a second or two, and it had all these names listed really, quickly, and one of them was like Remy LeBeau, and I was like, that's Gambit. Like, it's all these dumb things that it's not really it's an Easter egg, but at the same time, it's giving you really, like, that's more of an Easter egg. This is more like actual information that you could use. So there's somebody goes, well, why does this make sense? You can go back to something like this. So I'm really glad that we both had this written down in our notes, like first thing.
Another thing that was kind of neat that I got a kick out of was seeing her getting ready for bed, and she's pin curling her hair, which I was like, oh my word, I do that. I pin curl my hair to get like this vintage look. And my grandmother used to do that, and it was just, wetting your hair. You didn't have product because you couldn't get product during the war. It was just water, and you'd curl your hair and use bobby pins and set it for the night. And you had to do this every few days to keep that look. And so that was really funny when I saw her all in her nightgown and pin curling her hair, and so that made me laugh.
Well, also just it talks about like how how busy she is. Like that takes a lot of work to do all that and what she does, right? Yeah. Like how difficult it is to even then and now as a woman. It's me, I can just I tie my hair back and I put a baseball hat on and I walk out the door.
The more you do it, the faster it gets, the faster you get at it. Pin curling, on a side note, if you do a good pin curl set, it can last you for 4 days, and then you just have to curl it, set it for the night. So you really can go for about 4 days, and then you have to wash and reset. But, women were doing this during World War II while working, volunteering, having their house bombed on. So it was kind of that approach of, we need to put forth an effort to make it appear like things are normal as much as possible for, morale, just for us in general, right? Put on lipstick, do your hair, even if stuff is falling down around you, at least there's something small you can do to kind of keep normalcy in your life. So,
and that was a pretty fun scene though too, the whole getting ready for bed and finding a guy hanging from your window ledge like with a gun in his face, and I just kept thinking, good Lord, like, okay, the levels that men will go to, like he knows he's not supposed to be there, but boy does he, like it. And the thing is like I actually can relate, because when I was 19, I climbed the walls of an all-girls school once because my girlfriend wanted to sneak me in. So I actually can relate. I just never had a gun to my face.
When I was looking at it from her perspective of who's trying to sneak in and kill her.
Yeah, right. I mean, this guy is lucky that he didn't just end up on the pavement.
Yeah. And I love her line about clearly you don't know the rules of the house. And then she won't let him in, which of course I totally understand. Yeah. So that poor guy's hanging off the side of, serves him right, I guess. But
well, we find out that he did get in, because the next morning they have the whole Houdini analogy.
Yes.
that she tells everybody about how, and I love it because it's like this character is enjoying herself. Like you
Mhm.
thought you got away with something. She's had like I wonder how long how often she's used the Houdini analogy
Yeah.
amongst this
Well,
rotating group of girls that come to live there.
well,
Um,
Angie knows because she's like, oh no, Houdini, that's never good.
yeah. And that's just, like she's not messing around. That girl gets kicked out because that guy got in. And but the reason this scene is important is it gives Peggy the idea about how somebody broke in and stole Howard's bad baby. She's talking about how this place is impregnable, gives her the idea that if anybody can get into this place, somebody could get into Howard's place. No building is impregnable.
Mhm.
So meanwhile, you've got the cops, where we first like this is kind of also that Detective Ray Krasminski episode.
Yeah.
Um, Throughout the entire episode, he gets a lot of airtime, and it probably now in retrospect, I should have known what was going to happen to this character because they were focusing in on him so much. Problem is when is focusing on this character, it just shows how much of a jerk he is.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, we know that he visits places where women
Places
of
are cute.
yeah, I was gonna say place of ill repute. They know him there.
Yeah.
Um, Even though he found the license plate, which the cops find out that the car was at the Roxxon facility. They find out that it was tied to Howard Stark, even though they know Howard was on the lam. This is when they go after whoever was driving that car, and that leads them to Jarvis.
Yes.
um
And the fact that Jarvis kind of is hiding Peggy at Howard's house, like that was she barely makes it into the house before they show up, Sousa and Jack. And then she leaves her purse on the little stairwell, which made me nervous the whole scene.
well, I guess he could have said it's my wife's purse, but this was like I love that he immediately he's dealt with Howard so much. He knows what to do. He's very much like Alfred in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
or he just goes, okay, you want to take me downtown? Let's go downtown. You lead, like boom, like he's a so stand-up guy. But this also leads us to finding out when they get him in the interrogation room, that he was charged with treason. Um, I enjoy the scene on different levels because I'm not a big fan of the male SSR characters. Even I love the actors. I don't really care for the characters because they're just so of that time period. Um, it's a fascinating look at a time period, and
Mhm.
them thinking that they've got it over on him, like they don't. I guess it's kind of also fun to watch it because I know that they don't really know much. They always think that they've got their man. Like this is the scene in every cop show where they're like, "Yeah, press him. You're gonna get the information." And we know more than they do, and that helps me a little bit get through some of these scenes with these guys. If it's the first time you're watching this, it does kind of go, whoa, what did Jarvis do? Even Peggy reacts to this like it's about trust now, like because Howard's, she went through the war with Howard, but he's sketchy, and she
Yeah.
knows he's sketchy. And this guy that he's left her in charge with is Jarvis, and now she's got a reason not to possibly trust him at all. Um, And so this kind of holds a pall over that scene too. What do you have to say about this scene?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that it was interesting how well Jarvis handles the interrogation. Like you get the feeling that he's done this before, he's been through this before, and of course, the more we find out about him, the more you realize, yeah, he probably was put through the ringer because of this treason charge, which was dropped immediately. Um, But, Jarvis, Peggy's watching this interrogation and she's concerned that Jarvis is going to let something slip. And then we see this moment where Jarvis is really protecting Howard. He's really, being unwilling to crumble under the interrogation. And Jack also knows he can't really do his regular modus operandi. He just can't go in there with a stick and beat Jarvis because he knows there's money involved. He knows there's lawyers involved. So he's kind of limited in what methods he can use. And so instead of using threats and physical punishment, which, I don't think would have worked with Jarvis anyway, he starts being manipulative and brings Anna into the equation and the threat of immigration and deportation, which is such a concern of the time right now, like 2020. People are concerned about that. Families that have, there's a family that goes to my local church and they came here to escape from religious persecution. And there was a whole deal of, can they stay in Canada or not? If they're sent back to their country where they're from, they'll probably be murdered. That includes the father, the mother, and the kids, the two daughters. And so, this is obviously a concern of the time in Peggy's time period, but it's also a reality of modern times too. So I thought it was an interesting side note. And we find out more about why that is a hot button to push for Jarvis.
Yeah. Well, we also find out that they're withholding the report that he made about the car. So we've got them being on their best behavior because they know who they're dealing with and the repercussions of how they go about this. But then by purposely withholding the evidence, to me, is just, it's very much like a lot of stories from this time period of the cops having to do whatever it takes to get their man, there's a line in LA Confidential where one of the cops asks Edmund Exley, the rookie, would you be willing to plant evidence? Would you be willing to shoot an unarmed suspect in the back? And he's like, no, of course not. He's like, well, then for God's sake, don't join the detective squad. It's like the things that these guys do, it's pretty shameful to me. Like him even telling her right out, yeah, I got the report right here. This guy could walk out the door. Legally, they are supposed to be doing this, and they're bending. They're not just bending the law here, which is why I love that. She still does that. What's right is right. The Captain America kind of the way that she still, does what Steve would do, but how it became what Peggy would do anyway. But
yeah,
how she throws herself under the bus by saying, "Oh, here's the report." Like she sneaks in there, covers it up with the, "Oh, I need you to sign for this." Takes the report out of there, and then conveniently, here it is, right in front of Jarvis, giving him his out. And then just putting all that negativity and pressure on her, because Dooley really, is that his name, Dooley? Yeah, really lays into her, and so does Jack. The apology does not cover it, and to me, I'm just thinking, you're lucky that he's walking out of here and not calling his lawyer. Like, I don't think that they don't think about this. And I know that I kind of rail about the male characters in this show, but I can't help it. Because if, it to me, this is also of the time period then and now of what people try to get away with. It also makes me wonder when a more police, shows about police and justice and courts, how much more of what's going on today is going to affect how we see people portrayed. Are they going to start writing it so that they show the reality of what really goes on based, or are they going to continue to show us the fantasy of what goes on? Because I think a lot of us, when we know the guy is bad and the heroes do something like this, we go, yeah, even though what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah, it brings into question when, is morality black and white? At one point, is it okay to bend the law for a greater good? Like, I would think of, for example, what Jarvis did. If you want to talk about Anna, right? When we find out about why Jarvis was dishonorably discharged, why he was charged with treason, because he tried to forge a signature to get Anna passage out of, Nazi-occupied Europe because she was Jewish. So for me, that's an example of, breaking the law, but doing what's right.
But he also, in his case of the guy purposely wouldn't sign the papers.
He wouldn't sign, yes.
He was again he had to do the wrong. He had to do something wrong because something was already being wrong.
Yeah.
And the only way to fix it was to do something else. And that's where you can go. Like, people should be like, yeah. I mean, if he had gone to jail for it, or worse, I mean, it's difficult when you talk about the morality of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it acceptable? This was about an employee, like them maybe having some evidence. This was what Jarvis did, was trying to save a life. Like it's difficult. But this leads us into the introduction of a character I know you like to talk. I think you're going to like talking about, and that's Dottie. Okay, this is where we get introduced to Dottie, who, I mean, now after seeing it again, and I didn't know she was going to be in episode 3. I didn't realize she was in this, that she was introduced this early. I was like, wow. Like, she really comes on strong with the whole, I had never seen nobody from England. Like, just everything is just, she's the fresh off the bus from, like, wherever. I don't remember where they said she was from, Ohio or Illinois, or something like that. And I mean, we know as audience members now, especially if you've seen the end of the episode. If you haven't seen these episodes, there's a thing that says spoilers right before the video starts. So we're talking about everything. We know that she's bad news. But I love the actress who can play this kind of naive and be so believable and be able to turn it on and off. It's a really fun introduction because, the lady who runs the place is trying to introduce her and kind of ingratiate her into their lives. And, Angie's just sitting there, like, almost like you would, like, almost like foreshadowing of, like, I don't care about you. Like, you're like, I don't, almost like to tell the audience, Angie doesn't know that she's a bad person, but she's already just kind of like, no, moving on. And Peggy's just kind of like, yeah, another person. Good luck, But what do you think about the introduction of Dottie here?
I guess when we're talking about Angie in that scenario, if you remind me to step off on to discuss Angie, and then we'll jump back to Dottie for that scene. Sure. We have to remember that her and Peggy have kind of had a bit of a spat. Not a spat, but Angie's constantly trying to be a part of her life and trying to be like a positive influence. And hey, we're best buddies, and I'm off work now. I only got 50 cents in tips, and she's complaining about her job. We'll complain about our jobs together. I got schnapps and a rhubarb pie. Let's see which makes us sick first. And again, Peggy's doing that. Push people away. But this time it's because she actually wants to go do things for her job undercover. And so we get that kind of snarkiness from Angie where she really doesn't want to meet someone. But I also wonder if it's also foreshadowing that Angie's a really good judge of character. Like, she automatically gravitated towards Peggy, even though she knew very little about Peggy. She automatically kind of is like, about Dot. With regards to the introduction for Dot, I loved that. Is it Miriam? Yeah, the lady who owns the Griffith. She doesn't approve of dance, but she does approve of the discipline. So she's so like stereotypical of this like controlling, you know. And I guess what makes is kind of I think is funny is that the people that are so overly controlling about these things like sexuality or morality or whatever, in order for them to be so knowledgeable about it, they have to actually know something about it. So
Right.
the question is like, what's Marjorie's story? Like, is she
Yeah.
really squeaky clean as she said she is? And Jarvis himself, or not Jarvis, Howard knows her. He's like, oh yeah, Marjorie, she's still working at the Griffin. And so my question is, does Howard know Marjorie because he's had a lot of run-ins with her causing trouble at the Griffin? Or does he actually know Marjorie from like earlier on?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if it's like if she's somehow acquainted with him outside of the Griffith. Either one is pretty funny. It's a nice little thing that they don't really have to go back to. It's fun to just kind of speculate this. But
For Dottie, it's the actress who plays her is wonderful. She does a great job, and we really see this kind of, we believe that she's this innocent, wide-eyed, like come to New York, you know, far from away character until suddenly she isn't.
yeah.
And it kind of blows your mind, and you realize Peggy might be in over her head.
We also get the mention of is it Ray or Jack that talks to Sousa about the trading in the shield for an aluminum crutch.
That's right. That's
yeah,
right.
Ray again showing Ray's great side. I mean, throughout this episode, he's trying to ditch his shift, getting everybody to work for him. I'll let you work for me, Peggy. This one time, like he really. I really feel like that this episode did not do him any favors for how it ends. But I think that the end, what happens at the very end, is important still, even after the fact. We'll get to it. But poor Sousa, you know, it's a nasty thing to say, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I put like a little frowny face by my notes. I'm like, Sousa is just getting beat left, right, and center. Because okay, let's detour and talk about Sousa for a sec, because this episode is quite interesting. We have him, you know, trying to do the right thing and, you know, pull his weight with the group. And yeah, we do have that comment about no woman is gonna go from a red, white, and blue shield to an aluminum crutch. You know, and he's just being treated so terribly, and it continues on in the next episode with the interrogation.
I also like her going into when they do their little spelunking through the floor, finding that, you know, they give us that exposition, or not exposition, but a little historical fact that New York still used their sewers to have all that water go out, so that this is how the guy, he came in, just basically took a little boat and got out of there, which leads them to the boat where you see the symbol on the ship from that Brannis was, and where they have Stark's bad babies. And in this scene, like, forget about the stuff that's on the boat. The Jarvis moment here with Peggy talking to her about how she wants to go tell right away, and he's like, "Well, what are you going to do? How are you going to explain how you got here?"
Yeah.
And I loved this because it shows that it was right after they had the conversation about treason and whether she can trust him, and he tells her everything, and now he's giving her even more reasons to trust him because of how smart he thinks. She's so excited to get to maybe pull herself out of the dirt with these guys that she doesn't even think about that. They'll wonder about how you knew.
Yeah, and they'll blame you. That's exactly what I had. I put, Jarvis is smart. He notes that returning the found items won't clear Mr. Stark's name, and it will only put Peggy under suspicion. And the quote is, Peggy says, "They will respect me," which is really all she wants, right? And which is such a different change to the last episode of the season where she says, "I don't need anybody's I don't need anyone's permission. I don't need anybody's, respect. I know my value. So she does this complete change. But here she says they'll respect me, and Jarvis just like tell it like it is. He just says, but they won't. They'll only use it to tear you down.
And he really doesn't hold back in that fake interrogation where it's she had to see, and he had to hurt her a little bit to wake her up, to make her realize that you're not going to just get out of this with a great kid, all this evidence, that would help the case. Which then leads us to the fight with the big old bruiser on the ship. That guy was massive.
Yes.
For an older gentleman too, because he was kind of probably in his 50s, and he was jacked. He looked like they wanted to cast somebody that would look from that time period that also was just big. It's not easy probably to find somebody that big and ripped of that age. But I loved the way that they used the bad babies in this scene. Go ahead.
He looked like someone who had worked on the docks, somebody who got their hands dirty, was used to that kind of fisherman's lifestyle, hard labor, and as you said, they do have to use intelligence to beat this guy because he is so much muscle, which I think is interesting if you compare that to, say, the fighting style for Agent Melinda May.
Oh yeah, and I like that they didn't really pull punches. Like she gets hit. A lot of they don't just let her be a superhero. The reality of the situation is this man outweighs her by a lot, and just because she's trained doesn't mean that he couldn't act. If he got his hands around her, there probably wouldn't be much chance for her. And so it's nice that they how they did this. I thought it was really smart fight scene, not just.
Yeah, I love how they showed the different realistic fight styles, because if you compare, say, Peggy with Dottie is trained in a completely different fight approach. She's very much like Natasha. She's the original Black Widow. So she's going to use the other person's weight against them. Whereas Peggy is probably originally was taught by her brother. So she's used to throwing punches, just wailing on the person to get the job done, as opposed to necessarily being smart about the physics of how she's landing her attacks. Obviously she's been trained in that, she's better at it, but her approach is more of just beat the person until you get the job done, and be tougher and be harder. Whereas Dottie is more of manipulative, being smart, and a totally different fighting style. And she gets hit in the back with a baseball bat or something, or some kind of large object. It looked like it hurt. And it took, Jarvis came in and he was involved. He was being picked up by his neck. So you definitely did see that there was a threat, and she was in over her head. The other thing, when we were talking about Jarvis and them belaying down into the hole to figure out how they access the bad babies, we learn a bit more about Jarvis and his training, because he mentions that he's done this before, but with a friendlier, Saint Bernard or something. So I don't know if he's in the Alps, but we know that he has a lot of hands-on training. He knows how to tie knots properly. He knows how to belay down a cliff. So he's not, the typical British butler. He's
and again, dirty. It's he's very much like Alfred, except what if Bruce Wayne really did adopt that billionaire playboy part of his life, instead of faking it like Bruce Wayne does. Tony Stark or Howard Stark, both father and son, lived that lifestyle. And so it's got to be a little bit more difficult in some ways for Jarvis. He's a great character. and this leads us into this really funny scene where he has to call in the what they found, and him doing his American accent for Sousa on the phone. He's like, I'm
Wow.
just a pal. I'm just a pal. Like, what the what even was that? Who are you? Just a pal. Have a great day. Like, it was really, really funny. Which leads us to them getting there. They find the stuff. Everybody's happy, you know.
Yeah.
There is questions. There are questions, you know, because Dooley wants certain things figured out here, but that's where they send the bruiser with Ray,
Mhm.
and where a loose end gets tied up, a couple of them, and they get pulled, you know, they get stopped, and Ray gets out of the car, and you know, it's just it's in this kind of time period where it's also like people don't just shoot cops.
Yeah.
Even now, but like there was a safety of being a cop that is, I think, different now, where you
Unless,
the
I mean, unless you're dealing with like mafia scenarios.
yeah,
All the
yeah,
cards on the table.
you know, he just gets out of the car like, hey buddy, like it's normal, like a normal stop. Like nobody would do that now.
Hmm.
Nobody would do that now. No cop would get out now and just say, hey, what, like he would have his gun out if he was going to do it now. um and he gets killed. And I mean, which to me leads to, you know, like they put everything, Dooley puts everything on Howard Stark after this.
Yeah.
And but to me, the important part of Ray dying is how Peggy acts about it at the end. With Angie trying to not just try to fix that part of, you know, fix that relationship with Angie by going and talking to her and saying, look, I'm gonna make time for you. I'm here. I want to talk. I need you. But then to have this really surprising take on it, which just shows again, like she's a way better person than I am. This character is a way better person than I am, because I see Ray and I didn't really care what happened to him. I
Yeah.
just didn't. As a character, I was like, it's unfortunate that he died, but I, as an audience member, I was like, you know, but how she says it, like he's a brute, he's a cheat, he's disrespectful, he's rude, but he's good at his job. And he's dead now. And I had difficulty with it because she's just way better of a person than like how she thinks of it. Like we all should feel bad when somebody loses their life, but
Yeah.
like her take on it just goes above and beyond. Like I don't know what, before I dig myself too deep here, what did you
Yeah, I was kind of divided on it. I mean, on the one sense, I'm like, yeah, I appreciate that she values life. Like, no matter how much of a jerk this guy was, there's people who loved him, right? Like, I mean, Dooley says, have to now go call his wife and make that call that I don't want to make. And then Jack has kind of, I mean, the decency to be like, I'll call the girlfriend. You know, like somebody remembers the girlfriend, right? She's not the wife. She doesn't get the status of being the wife. She doesn't get, you know, the payout from the will and the insurance. She'll get, you know, nothing. But she was still a part of his life, whether or not that was a proper choice for him to make, right? He had two women
yeah
and he was lying to his wife. But we do see, you know, at least Jack is a gentleman enough to say, hey, I'll make the call for the girlfriend. So in the one sense, yeah, Peggy values life, and even though he's a jerk, he doesn't deserve to be murdered like that. On the other hand, when I heard that quote, I kind of went, but is he? Is he good at his job? Really? I mean, they kept making him the muscle all through the season. I think if we had actually seen him do something, like, you know, if he had shown up and saved one of the agents' lives by like pummeling a guy, you know, when maybe Sousa was overpowered by three guys at once and he shows up and he's like, hey, pick on someone your own size, and like punches the guy's lights out and maybe gets his like gets a black eye and gets his arm broken for his trouble, then I would have felt like, yeah, he's a jerk, but he wants to do the right thing in his job.
Yeah.
Scene of him before he dies, I really couldn't agree with Peggy. I was like, is he good at his job? We haven't really seen him be good at his job. We've seen him be the jerk and the guy that makes the bad comments that really shouldn't be said. Even the guys in the group agree they shouldn't have been said. But he's not really that valuable in his job.
Yeah, I mean, he found the license plate, but that was his only job, was to go through that thing, and he found something that it was just there.
Yeah, he found the license plate and he found the passports that were hidden in the chair at the hotel.
Yeah.
Talk about, because we skipped that, but
we can talk about it right now before we get to episode 2. I mean, I forgot about that part, but to me, that wasn't even good police, because that to me, that just shows where he goes to when he goes to somewhere to look around. He just automatically starts trashing a place.
Yeah,
like cutting open, instead of doing a search, it's just automatically goes to destruction of property to find that.
Yeah, and the hotel owner's like, hey, be careful with this stuff, and they're like, get out, so they pull the we're the police, we're in charge here, move aside kind of card, which ironically Coulson kind of pulls that card in Thor when he takes all of the doctor's Jane's notebooks and whatnot. So that was.
But he doesn't destroy them, at least.
He doesn't destroy them, but he does confiscate them. But yeah, it reminded me of the Sherlock Holmes stories, where Sherlock complains about the police just go in like a herd of buffalo and they destroy any and all evidence. So yeah, Kaminsky goes in and just starts ripping things apart, whereas someone like Sousa and Jack are more methodical. Like, they'll go in and they'll examine the scene, they'll think about things, and especially Sousa, we see him always, looking around, examining things, picking things up, and even his chief Dooley's like, Sousa, what are you doing? Get over here, right? And he's finding stuff and he's putting things together. One of the things you were talking about, how you really don't like the guys, especially in this episode, there was a kind of one small positive moment. We have when they're at the hotel, and then Kaminsky, I'm not sure if it's at the hotel, but anyway, Kaminsky leaves and Jack makes some kind of comment about how Kaminsky doesn't have any friends. He's like making some kind of a joke, and the chief tells Jack, don't be that guy. No.
Yeah, I even wrote that down right here at the top of my notes, is don't be that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, so at least we know that Chief Dooley is, he's aware of the guys that are being jerks in his team. He's willing to call them out when they're being that. And maybe it's because he's seeing Jack he's grooming Jack to be a replacement as chief. And so he wants Jack to be a better man. He wants Jack to go the high road. What else did I have here? Jarvis has a tell.
Oh yeah, the Carol Burnett.
Yeah, that was kind of cute. And Peggy keeps asking him, do you have anything you want to tell me? Right, so she knows he's hiding stuff from her, but she doesn't know why he's doing that. And of course, we find out later it's because of Anna, his wife. Ray asks Sousa if he's sweet on Peggy during the night shift. I thought that was interesting. So Kaminsky might not be the brightest with police work, but he definitely picks up on who likes who.
Again, and I would probably think that just kind of goes towards more of like, do I have a shot at Peggy kind of thing? Like, I honestly think that Ray doesn't notice those things unless he's thinking about it himself. Mm-hmm. Like, more like competition than anything. Like,
he offers her his night shift, right? In like the most obtuse rude way possible. And then he's like, why didn't she take it? Why isn't she grateful? What's up with her? What's her problem? Right? And it's
that actor plays a lot of guys like this. I remember in Breaking Bad, he's the guy that talking on his phone all the time, rudely, in an episode of Breaking Bad where he doesn't get killed or anything in Breaking Bad, but he does get his car set on fire. This guy's really good at the rude behavior character, the kind of the ape, the Cro-Magnon type of attitude.
I think some of the two scenes that I liked quite a lot during this episode. One was when we got to see how Jarvis reacts when someone threatens his wife.
Yeah.
He totally changed, and you just see kind of this ferocity to him of like, you don't bring my wife into this. Like, I will kill you.
Yeah. If they were on the street and this was happening, yeah, it would have been punches would have been thrown.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I don't know, that warms my heart. I'm like, oh, see, Anna and Jarvis forever. You know, I'm just excited for her to show up because she's so much fun. And then when Peggy shows up at the end of the episode, you already mentioned this, you know, that she goes and talks to Angie and asks, you know, can I maybe tell you about my day? And the song that's playing in the background is Someone to Watch Over Me. And I thought that was just a perfect choice because Peggy's starting to realize that she needs these friendships. She needs these moral and physical support systems. She has Jarvis, but she needs a girlfriend in her life. She needs a girl there to just listen and talk to. And it reminded me, it just brought to mind Captain America, the Winter Soldier, when Natasha keeps trying to set up Steve with people. You know, what about the nurse? What about the girl that works at this office, blah, blah, blah. And really what he needs at that point in life is a good friend, which is why Sam shows up and just fills that void that he needs. So I liked that they kind of hinted to that sort of parallelism between the Marvel movies and TV shows. That we see these strong people, just like Captain America needs a support network, as we talked about last episode. Peggy really needs someone like Angie. And we'll see in the next few episodes that she's actually a really worthwhile friend to have in your corner.
Yeah. Which leads us to the second episode that we're talking about, the Blitzkrieg button, episode 4, where we get the return of Dominic Cooper as Howard Stark here. I like this little beginning of the subterfuge at the train depot. Him having this deal going on to procure the train car. We don't know what's on the train car. You've got the guys. It felt like Batman. It felt like Batman a little bit. Like something in the shadows, the ball coming out. You know, we don't. All of a sudden, people are getting taken out in the shadows. That's a Batman move. Like I loved this beginning. I loved the trick briefcase with that gases the guys. You know, this deal gone wrong, just to find out that it's not some weapon or anything. It's just Howard Stark playing pool, enjoying in style being smuggled back into America. Cooper plays this character so well. And it's so weird that they keep recasting they kept recasting Howard Stark. In Iron Man 1, he was only in pictures, but it was a different guy. On Agent Carter, it was Dominic Cooper. In the later Iron Man stuff and like Endgame, we had the guy from Mad Men, Slattery, who I love. I think it's interesting that Howard Stark has been recast more times. It's like and many times is like a Game of Thrones character for such a kind of a side character for the bigger picture. That we did get 2 really good actors to play him. And I love how he plays him a very Howard Hughesy kind of way. You know, I like greed. I like predictable. And, he's still tough enough to like throw the cue ball at the guy at the last second and say, "Oh, I have the quippy comment of I was about to run the table." Like Dominic Cooper just really, really brings it here. I wish we would have had more of him, but again, it was around the time that he started making Preacher, so I guess we're kind of lucky we got him at all. But this episode really shows a lot more about Howard Stark as a character and his character, and it kept making me wonder, when did Howard Stark finally settle down? Like like what, we don't really know much about Tony's mom. Like what kind of woman was able to tame Howard Stark, because it doesn't matter. Every single room is a potential, conquest for him.
Yep.
And as savvy as he thinks he is, I feel like in a lot of ways he really doesn't quite understand the trouble he's in. So I'm kind of setting the table for this. Like the whole thing about how, have you tried the goulash, and Peggy, Jarvis, she can do 107, one-arm push-ups, but not realizing that his place, one of his secret penthouses, would be discovered.
Yeah, the fact that Peggy recognizes there's an agent there, there's an agent here, there, turn left, you're not safe. And he thinks, well, him and Jarvis both think it would have been a safe house because it's filtered through two different businesses that aren't even connected with his name. And Peggy makes the comment about the SSR is out for blood. Like, you caused the death of one of their agents, good agent or not, they're still out for blood. I agree with you on that entrance. I loved that entrance where she, just a heel to the face, and takes out three guys just without even breaking a sweat. It was very much like a Batman movie.
Like, just out of the shadows comes Peggy Carter, not somebody in a bat suit, just a really determined agent of the SSR.
Exactly. The laundry room scene where, she's like, fine, I think I know where I can put you. I can help hide you out. She's like, I can't believe I'm even doing this. And sneaking Howard into the ladies only Griffith Hotel. And he doesn't like small spaces. So he doesn't want to go in the dumbwaiter. Like, as you said, he doesn't really realize the danger that he's in. And that Peggy's really putting her neck out for him. And then we get to meet Miriam. And I liked how Peggy manipulated the conversation. And it was really these two women who are quite smart trying to one-up the other.
Oh, yeah. Who's going to blink? Who's going to accidentally say the wrong thing to clue the other one in? Because you can just tell the whole time that Miriam is just itching to catch someone in the act of anything. She's like, literally, I don't even know, like, is she just walking the halls at night? Right? Like, it's just, she's like, she needs she's like the literally the term of the, got to put a bell on her, like the cat kind of thing. Because she just appears out of nowhere anytime you're trying to get away with anything. She'd be the kind of person today who would have all the, security cameras, and, she's what was necessary before security cameras. She was her own security. Like,
yeah,
it makes me wonder how much sleep this woman got trying to keep all the men away from the girls. Like,
I don't know. It was almost like it was a challenge for her. Like, just try to get one guy up those stairs. But yeah, we have this conversation where she's literally lecturing Peggy about the id and the ego, and talking about how, until a certain age, you don't have control over your own desires. I'm going like, you realize you're lecturing an agent, right? Who's probably killed more people than you blinked at. Just unbelievable. And you can tell that she's getting to Peggy. Like, Peggy is really quite getting frustrated. But I love how she used where the first thing she says is, I am sure many a woman owes her virtue to your watchful eye. She uses the charm first, and then that look when they open up the laundry dumbwaiter, and you can see she's like expecting there to be something in there, and it's just Peggy's dumb bag.
Ready to pounce and nothing. And then yes, but she has to pull Howard out of a room immediately. Doesn't take him long.
He's tucking his shirt back into his pants, like, and she points it out. She's like, "You're disgusting."
Yeah, and it's right to point it out because I mean, literally, he wasn't like, I know that women like, I shouldn't say it like that. Someone famous like Howard Stark could have a lot of pull with women, but that even for him, that's fast. Like, but again, it goes back to how well does he know the Griffith? Like, are these people that he's already visited before? Does he know his way around enough to know whose door to knock on?
Because it's Miriam. He's like, is she still there?
So I think it goes to the point of he's just been playing like a cat and mouse game with her that she doesn't know he's playing. Like, how many? But I guess no, he must have been caught at some point. Unless they could have talked about her. Like, watch out for Miriam. If Miriam catches you, I'm kicked out of here. But at the same time, it's like, well, then why? If Howard likes these girls so much, why doesn't he just put them up in a penthouse like every other girl? But that's a big part of this episode. Kind of is Howard's character gets brought up several times. Now go ahead.
The camera pen.
Oh yeah.
He's not impressed by the camera pen, but he's like, "Oh, I don't. Those first four aren't for your eyes." She's like, she looks very uninhibited.
Because she's not fazed by like what he's trying to like. I think he's purposely trying to upset her in a way, or see what he can get away with her, where see what shocks her, and she's just like, I don't care, like, so what? Like, what are you trying to prove by, you know what I mean?
They're almost like brother and sister to the point. Like, you're annoying me so much. I really would like to punch you right now, but I need to work with you. So can you please stop being a jerk and let's keep, getting whatever we're supposed to get done.
I mean, she's the one who defended him to Captain America back in the first movie, like he's the best pilot we got, and well, he's also smart as heck with building everything. But moving on to with Dooley finding out about the dead guys, that these guys were dead in Russia at this Battle of Fennel, or at least they've assumed the identities of two men that died at this place, which leads him to go to Germany to talk to this about to be executed Nazi. Who that gentleman is also played by another great character actor. I didn't look up anybody's names this episode, and now I'm getting mad at myself for not, because that guy who plays the German is a fantastic character actor. But I wondered about that, because getting on a plane, let's just assume that the SSR have access to planes, right? They do, but going all the way to Germany and getting back in time for the end of the episode just seemed a little far-fetched to me, because of how long it would take planes back then to get all the way over there, doing what he has to do, go through security. Because I mean, this is, I guess I'm just a little, after shows like that have had a lot of like weird time discrepancies, and I know this is just a minor thing to nitpick about this episode. It's just, I don't understand how he could get to Germany, do what he has to do there. This guy's like part of the Nuremberg trials, I'm assuming. It would be hard politically for anyone to get to talk to this guy, especially somebody like a group like the SSR, who aren't the FBI, aren't the CIA. They're a new group that most probably, people probably don't even know.
Yeah.
And then to do that, get back on the plane, come all the way back to New York City in time for the end of the episode, because not a lot of time goes by in this episode.
Yeah.
So that was my big nitpick was that. But I do like that Dooley's like, that's how much they want to solve this, is he's gonna follow any lead. And if that he says, like, I would kiss Goering if it would get us somewhere in this case. And Shea Wiggum, who plays Dooley, is fantastic here. And like I said, I don't like the characters. I don't like their attitudes because they're so true to the time, but they're played so greatly. This is like the third show that Shea Wiggum has been in that's like from this around this time period. He was in Boardwalk Empire, he's in Perry Mason, and he's in Agent Carter, all taking place in like the 30s, 40s, and 50s. He has that perfect way about him that fits this kind of time period. And while I don't like what his character says and does, he is played so fantastically. And he gets a really great moment against that Nazi later, we'll get to. But
I mean, I think I like Dooley. I like Dooley because I see that he's a good guy who's trying to do the right thing. I remember reading an interview with the actor who plays him, and he said that for him as an actor, when he plays Dooley, Dooley's the kind of boss that stays up at night thinking about how he could have saved the guys in his team that didn't make it. Like thinking about what could he do different to make things better for his boys, like meaning his team. So, and the fact that he does change throughout the course of the series, he grows and changes and really becomes a support for Peggy. I think he has to be at a certain point at the beginning of the series where he can actually change. Otherwise, there's no character development. So
yeah, he's definitely a character that when we finally get to where we get with Dooley, I do have a change of heart about it. I'm watching this like a person who has, like, I literally haven't seen these since they first aired. So all those old feelings are still there, even though I know kind of where it's headed. I can't remember all the details of where it ends up, but I do remember by the end I changed how I felt about like Dooley and Sousa. I can't remember if I changed the way I felt about Jack, but everybody has to start somewhere. It's like on Lost. Again, I always go back to Lost for some reason. How a character like Sawyer, if you're not familiar with it, I don't know, but like he was, started out as this guy that everybody couldn't stand, and he was almost going out of his way to be an unlikable person, and then where he ends up, so you have to have characters that are like that. You can't, if you don't have characters that go through growth, then they're just one-dimensional and they're not interesting. It's just a challenge at times to watch these kind of characters. Like it's the same thing with like shows like Mad Men that dealt with the beginning of the sexual revolution and women's roles changing in the workplace and in society, and watching how these men behave. But then change throughout, or lack, some even go backwards, and that's still change. If you can actually devolve and become worse, that's still change. So Dooley could have been that way, or Jack could have been that way, or even Susie could have been that way. Instead, right now it feels like how at the beginning of the series they are pretty one-dimensional, and then pretty quickly they become way more than that. And I feel like this is that kind of step for Dooley, showing, like you said, what he will do for his boys, even though it's like he's in this system that is hard to watch play out. Like that they don't treat her with respect. They don't think of women the same way that we do, or we try to now more. It's just, I was always, my mother always just raised me to respect women. And it's just, so when I see these kind of characters do that, I'm just like, well, look, trust me, it's about the only good thing my mom ever did. But but it's stuck. It's the one thing that's stuck, and it's really hard for me to watch Peggy go through this and keep getting blamed by the other characters, But at the same time, I understand a little bit why they're on her because of things like that. She allows herself to be throws herself under the bus to take heat for things that are helping someone else, getting the heat off of somebody else.
You were talking about the interrogation with Chief Dooley and the Nazi criminal.
Yeah.
And that what he does in that scenario, we get to see how smart he really is, how he kind of plays that. He offers him a way out. He's like, I'll give you a cyanide pill if you tell me information.
Yeah. It's not like you're not getting a deal. I can't get you out of what's going on here, but I can do like something that'll make it so that you don't have to suffer the way they want you to suffer. And then, yeah, I'll let you tell it because that's the whole, like, I forgot. I was like, wow, I can't believe he's really doing this. And then.
Yeah, see, the moment where I was like, wait a minute, was when he's like, hey, you want a mint? And he hands it to the military police officer. And I'm like, did he just give that poor police officer cyanide? And then I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, that really was a mint. Oh, I got it now.
He got what he needed from the Nazi, and he's still gonna let him die. He let him think for a second that he was, but the thing is, like, he won't know until he's about to die, and that's even like, if you think about that, right? He's gonna wait until the last possible second to take this, and then he's thinking, I'll think happy thoughts is on my way to wherever, and realize, why does this taste so good?
Minty, and then he's like, oh, okay, and then
yeah.
So for me, I was like, okay, Dooley can operate at multiple levels of deception. This is why he's the chief. Okay, I see this now. I see where this is going. So that was very interesting. I also, there was two characters that went through a lot of changes in this episode. One was Sousa and one was Jack. So did you want to
go ahead?
Get into, okay, so for Sousa, we know that he wants to investigate more at the dock scene, right? Because somebody made a call, an anonymous tip, and so he's chasing after that. Goes to the dock, wants to pull fingerprints off of there, sees two bums that are playing cards, tries to get information from them. One using money, doesn't get any information. The other, they get into a confrontation. I was impressed that Sousa could take out a full-grown guy using, his
crutches.
Yes, thank you. I was like, what is it?
I was getting
his crutch, to like knock the guy down and pin him with the crutch, and then handcuff him, with one hand managing the crutch and holding the guy down. So that was impressive. But we see how Sousa thinks and how he works, that he pays attention to the people that, don't really make the cut for the SOE, regular agents. He pulls this guy in. He's convinced that there's some information there. And we have this conversation with Jack and Sousa, right? Where Sousa comes in and he's clapping and he's like, Agent Sousa has found Howard Stark. We can all rest now. Right? Like he's mocking him. But then Sousa tries his approach, which is, let me get to know you as a person. And he talks about how we're both people that nobody really care anything about. I was in the war. People only feel bad for me because I lost my leg, right? You're on the street. People don't really care about you either. But we're in the same boat. So he tries to make this connection. And this guy has no interest in helping the police. And Sousa comes at it from a completely different perspective, the interrogation, offers the guy food and a beer or whatever, alcohol, vodka, whatever it is, and gets the information that way. And he makes this comment about not everybody left the war wanting a warm hug, right? But then at the end of this episode, Sousa tells Jack, you're a good agent. He has this line about you have a good nose, agent. You sniffed out a witness everyone else overlooked. So we see a bit of a change in Jack, where he recognizes that Sousa actually is worth his weight. He's pulling his own, and he's.
Now, also in this episode, we get introduced to a character briefly, doesn't stick around, named Mr. Mink, the guy that they've been setting up the deal with Howard earlier. His little mini Gatling gun. Now, as cool as I thought that idea was, it felt a little like that would be messy. Like that would be a messy gun to handle. And there's a point where the first guy he shoots, it keeps firing, but we don't see any more bullets go anywhere. Like I don't know. I like that idea, but also wouldn't that gun would get really hot firing that quickly, that often. I like the actor who plays him, but I really thought that this was going to be the type of character, like kind of a crime boss, right? That would stick around. And I love that kind of subversion of expectations of how we deal with him, because this guy is a scary guy. And how do you deal with a scary guy? You find an even scarier person to take care of them. And in this case, he sneaks his way into the Griffith. He's got flowers. He wants to take the flowers up to the place, and he knows what the room is. He ends up there. And who does he see as he's trying to get into Peggy's room? He sees Dottie. And I'll let you talk about this part, because this was a great reveal of bad guy getting messed up by somebody even worse.
Yes, I mean, it reminds me of conversations later on in the series where they're asking about Dottie's training, and they're asking about why did you pick these kind of people to train through this program? I don't want to give too much away. And the response is that, women are always underestimated, and so they're easier to get into a location and to carry out the job. And we see that with Mink. Like, first off, okay, it's a side note. First off, I thought Howard said he was just predictable and a crime boss, but he wasn't a threat. And then we meet this guy and he's shooting people left, right, and center. I'm going, Howard, I think you're maybe in a little bit over your head. Like, why are you dealing with this dude? He's scary, right? Like,
yeah.
Who does Howard know that this guy is someone on his contact list to be like, hey, I need to get out of the country. I'll pay you. Anyway, so Mink shows up. He tries to, as you say, drop off flowers for Peggy, but thankfully, because of Miriam's rule, he can't go up to the second floor. So then he just breaks his way into the Griffith, which proves Peggy's point from the earlier episode of no place is impenetrable. And he's listening at the door to see if Peggy's in the room, ready to break in. And who comes out but Dottie in her traditional role, right? Of, oh, are you looking for Peggy? And then we see this change where she sees the gun and he tells her, ma'am, go back to your room.
Inside, yeah.
And she's like, is that an automatic? I want it. Like, and she just completely changes. And we see her pull a Black Widow takedown, which is, wrapping her legs around the guy's head, taking him down.
Swinging him, yeah.
And snapping his neck and killing him instantly, which is a look or a move that we see Natasha Romanoff do all the time throughout the Marvel films. So that was really cool. And then, of course, we realize Dottie is part of the first Black Widow program that they're running in Russia. So Dottie's not who she appears to be. Dottie is a Russian assassin and spy. And yeah.
And good, and she's really good. I mean, like after she takes him down, that close up isn't for some cool pose. She's listening. Did anyone hear that? Will I have to kill anyone else? Like we don't see it, but she's thinking already that far ahead of like, and capable enough to get him into her room, hide him under her bed. I really. Bed. How's she gonna get him out of there? I mean, maybe the laundry, but then that would draw suspicion to the Griffith. So it makes you go like, what is she really gonna do to this guy? She'd probably have to chop him up.
Did she hide him under her bed? I thought she hid him under Peggy's bed, but maybe it was like the transition screen.
Oh, there were 3 scenes going on at the end. There was Dooley, there was Peggy in the wall, and there was Dottie in her room. I thought maybe I can't remember if he was under her bed or not. But maybe she just didn't notice. I'd have to rewatch that. We'll find out. We'll find out next week.
Wow, we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out with episode 5. I liked that it was such a weird little scene with the food pockets. Them in the lunch area where they're talking about I'll stuff a whole chicken down my shirt, and then everybody having their little things, and even Dottie in that scene, like, will you make me one for pickles? Like, and I mean, they sell it again really good where she's like looking in there like, woo, like
really putting in that pickle pocket. That's what I want to know now. Like
showing like what these girls have to do to just try to get some extra food, It's that not only is she controlling who who comes in and what floors men can be on, but like also like the meals and everything else, the struggle that these girls are going through, that they feel the need to have to smuggle food into their rooms because they can't afford it. Like it's interesting. And now go ahead.
One comment I'll make, it relates back to like World War II, because remember how Dottie said something, or not Dottie, Angie said something about, I thought the war was over. I thought we were all spending money now. I only made 50 cents in tips. And then complaining on the breakfast, she says, powdered eggs. I thought the war was over. We should have something real. So it's showing the reality of, even though the war has ended, you still can't get the food that you might want to get as easily. You still can't get fresh eggs all the time. Sometimes you have to have powdered eggs, or it might reflect that Miriam's a cheapskate. She's trying to save a lot of money. But more the reality of it is we still don't have access to everything that we'd like to have access to because of the ramifications of the end of the war. Another cool little side comment, the nurse that's getting food in the lineup, and she's in her uniform. Her cap has a black band on it. That means that she's a registered nurse. So she did 4 years studying to become a nurse. So that's kind of cool. My mom was a nurse, so she had that cap and wore that cap when she worked in the 70s. So that was kind of a neat. I was like, hey, I recognize that uniform. Yeah, and what else? Did we want to talk about Howard and Peyton?
Well, the next big thing. I mean, really quickly, when Dooley finds out about the massacre, that there was no, this wasn't a battle. Mm-hmm. We found a bunch of bodies. Like, this is somebody else did something there. That's going to be coming up in later episodes of what's really going on in Fennell and things like that. But the last bit we need to talk about is the Howard Peggy thing, because he tells her that she needs to go find one of his bad babies. She's got to steal it back. It's this giant EMP that's gonna, he tells her this whole song and dance, and we find out that what they have is not that, and what they have is Steve Rogers' blood. And and Jarvis knew, and and lied about it as well. And this whole situation here between him and her is really, really great because he has his reasons, and he's not wrong about wanting it, but he's wrong about how he went about doing it with and lying to her, because again, he's kind of like the rest of the guys that won't put their 100% faith in her, that she can, she just because it's Steve's blood, I'll let you talk about this a little bit before, because I've been rambling now. But the speeches that they give to each other here is great.
Yeah, I mean, if we just jump back to her getting the blood first, I thought it's interesting. She goes in, she takes the blood, she swaps out the dummy case so no one will notice, and she gets caught by Jack. She's trying to avoid people, so she goes into a side office, closes the door, and Jack's in there finishing off what's left of the alcohol from their previous interview. And they have this conversation about she's hiding something. And of course, you're thinking, oh no, does he know that Peggy took the item for Steve? But his comment is, no, you're just hiding the truth from yourself. And Jack, in only Jack can do fashion, tells her, no man will ever consider you an equal. Sad, but it doesn't make it any less true. And she says, I can always come to you for the truth, right? Just this biting, stinging comment. But what I noticed about that is that Jack is telling Peggy what it's like to be a woman, and he's basically mansplaining her experience to her. And then the like irony is that Howard does the exact same thing to her when they have this argument that you want to talk about, where he starts mansplaining to her what the ceiling is. So we'll get to that, but like, yes, they have this great sort of argument where she knows that it's Steve's blood in there, and she's trying to get Howard to tell her the truth. She's like, what's in the vial, Howard? Tell me what's in the vial. It's like, why do you want to know? I'm just curious what's in the vial, right? And he keeps using emotion and language to try to manipulate her to get himself off the hook. I wrote down here that Howard lies and uses emotions to try to manipulate women all throughout his life, but he even tries to use it on Peggy. And he says here, you're angry. She says, I'm curious. Howard says, it's Steve Rogers' blood, and Peggy punches.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a appropriate response.
Exactly. And then their conversation, Peggy says, you used me, you lied to me. You don't get to use my reaction to your lies as a reason for your lies. Because he's basically saying, I'm lying to you because look at you, you're hysterical. And she's like, no, you don't get to take how I emotionally react to what you're telling me as a reason for you to not tell me anything. And then he goes with the protecting motto, right? Well, I was just protecting you. And she calls him out on that too. She says, don't pretend. This is about me and my emotions. You're out to protect you. I trusted you, right? And I just wrote in the notes, like, Howard's mansplaining. He talks about, you don't get to where I am by playing nice. You get to where, my mother, worked she made shirt collars for a living, and my father drove whatever, right? We're blue collar, no money. Like, you don't get to be a multimillionaire without breaking a few eggs, right? Along the way.
Yeah, his natural instincts speech.
Yeah. His natural instinct is to lie. And, and then he has the audacity to explain to her what the ceiling is by saying there's a ceiling for certain types of people based on how much money your parents have, your social class, your religion, your sex. The only way to break through that ceiling is to lie. That's my natural instinct. And I was like, Howard, you're literally telling Peggy what she's living right now as a woman trying to break through in her job at the SOE and the SSR. I mean, like, you don't have a foot to stand on. Just stop while you're not ahead, behind, until you dig yourself in a bigger hole. And his argument is a capitalist argument, right? But it's couched in a humanitarian claim where he says Steve's blood can provide vaccines, it can cure the common cold, and Peggy immediately calls him out on it. She's like, I'm not believing your BS here. She says, she talks about Howard says he can save millions of people, and Peggy says, and how many millions of dollars are you set to make? Right? Yeah. I think that she's got this great speech. She says, I think you're a man out for his own gain, no matter who you're charging. You are constantly finding holes to slither your way into in the hopes of finding loose change, only to cry when you're bitten by another snake. You're a man who says, I love you, while looking over a woman's shoulder into a mirror. Ouch. But true, right? Steve's dedicated his life to his country, not Howard's bank account, right? And so she's like, you're the kind of guy that I've watched for the last few episodes chasing skirts. Howard will trust a shark not to bite him if it has a mini skirt that's short enough, right? This is the kind of guy he is. And she calls him out and says, you're in this for capitalist gain. And thank you for reminding me that the reason I went into this job in the first place was to represent Steve, and I've forgotten that. And I have a higher calling than what you're calling me to, and I've let myself and I've let Steve down because I allowed you to have me running around New York as your gopher, thinking I was doing something great, thinking you were giving the wonderful Peggy Carter a chance. And so this great conversation about, what is right in the situation, and Howard is not a person that she can now trust because he's used her and he's lied to her. And ironically, we see that he's done the same with Jarvis. Also, side note, we see a cameo of Stan Lee.
Yeah, I was just about to say before we wrap this up, because that pretty much summed up everything I could say, is that we do get a really great Stan Lee cameo here. Next to Howard sitting there, can I have the sports section? It's actually the thumbnail to this is him and Howard sitting next to each other. I just couldn't resist putting Stan in this. But we end with Peggy hammering the blood into the wall, not literally, but hammering a hole into the wall to put the blood in, to hide in it, while Dottie listens in next door, trying to listen in. She's like, is she drilling? I can't remember if she's drilling or if that was something else. And then we have the typewriter that you have in the background here. The typewriter that starts typing back for Dooley as it ends the episode. Just a couple of really great episodes. And these two episodes, again, continue to show, first off, why this show should have never been canceled when it had so much to say, and it's not hammering it into you, and it's not telling us anything that we shouldn't know. Mm-hmm. It's reminding us of how not that different things are from then and now. It's just done differently. It's done in a different way now. In fact, it's in some ways you could say that at least the way they did it back then was right out in the open. And now it's more insidious.
It's covert.
Yeah. And how important a character like Peggy is, and how inspiring every single episode is without feeling hammy.
Yeah, and it's not like they're hitting you over the head with a moral message, right? It's like moral message is interwoven into the whole story.
And they have it also, if guys have a problem with it, there's always brought up that this is how Cap is. You have a problem with Cap? Like, because I one of the things I think about is people that love the MCU. that are hateful people. And I think to myself, do you think this is how your Captain America is? Is this what you think Captain America goes home and thinks, I actually just go home and I hate people?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I have a hard time and so when you see this, it's like it reminds them Peggy, she's standing on her own 2 feet, but she also they smartly use that idea of Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
That this isn't just man, woman. This is just how we're supposed to be. And so it isn't something that's hard to wrap our heads around. It's not oh man, when somebody tries to only make it one way. It's accessible. It's accessible to everyone. This isn't something that's saying or exclusionary either. This is very simple stuff and written so well. This is as well as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is written.
Yeah.
And performed just as well. And it's just, I can't wait to, I'm glad that we got to do this again this week, because it makes me more excited for next week. Because it's like when we sit and we actually talk about it, it's one thing to write the notes down. It's one thing to watch them again, but to actually talk it out gets me more excited, gets me more into it. And I hope that everybody at home gets as into it as I do talking about it. And it helps to have somebody like Corrie here, who's so eloquent with the way that she talks about it and cares about it, that it makes me care more about it too. So I really appreciate your passion that you brought to this second episode, just as much as the last episode. I love the T-shirt, by the way. Is that a T Fury T-shirt?
Pardon?
Is that from T Fury?
It's from T Fury. Yes, it is.
I remember it from the catalog. I almost bought it a long time ago. Now I'm regretting it.
Well, yeah.
I think you can probably still pick it up. It's just more expensive now. So, any last thoughts before we end?
A few things we forgot to mention, that Sousa grabs that picture of Peggy and colors the hair with a
yes,
brown. So he's starting to put the dots together. And we'll see some more little puzzle pieces click into place with the next few seasons. Oh, and at the end scene where Peggy turns on the radio to drown out the noise of her hammering into the wall, there's actually an Agatha Christie murder mystery where a character does the exact same thing to cover over breaking into a safe. So I thought that was kind of neat. And I had a few little quotes that I grabbed from the last episode that were quite funny. Episode 3, when they try to get into Howard's place, Jack and Sousa says, "Unbelievable, a known fugitive isn't answering his door." And then Jack says, "Knock harder." And Sousa replies, "Sure, can I borrow your forehead?" So, some of those are just hilarious lines.
The banter.
And Peggy says to Howard, "Why is your mustache so sad?" And then that line you were talking about, Kaminsky says, "No girl's going to trade in a red, white, and blue shield for an aluminum crutch." And when Jarvis and Peggy were talking about, will he give her information? Will he share the information on why he was charged with treason? And Jarvis says, "Mr. Stark deemed it enough, his word of honor." He deemed Jarvis's word of honor enough to not ask. And then Jarvis has this line about his wife where he says, "I may not always be truthful with Anna, but I'm always honest." And that's how he is able to work with, Peggy. Anna doesn't know yet. We'll see if she finds out in the future. But, he has this fine line where he doesn't tell Anna everything, but he's always honest with her. And I've heard similar phrases be used by friends of the family who are police officers. And they're like, "I don't tell my wife everything when I go home. Firstly, one, I can't legally. Secondly, I don't want her to have to deal with the fact that I had to, deal with 3 murders yesterday and a suicide and whatever else, right? So that response that Jarvis had, it just reminded me a lot of people who are in the front lines, like firefighters, police officers, doctors, who, you know, they come home to their significant other and they'll share some things, but they also have this burden that they have to carry where they're trying to protect their partner and they don't want their wife or husband, you know, to have to know about what they have to see on a daily basis in their work life. And so that kind of just that warmed me a bit more to Jarvis. You know, that he wants to be honest with his wife. He wants to be worthy of her trust, but he also needs to protect her. And this is a completely different type of protection than what we see in Howard. You know, Howard uses protection as a word to manipulate, get things he wants, and not have to share important things with a woman. Whereas Jarvis uses protection as a way to actually keep Anna safe, but also be honest and open in communication with her. So, yeah, Jarvis gets all the points this episode, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Jarvis really brings it home in both episodes pretty well. All right, well, that's gonna do it for this week's video. I think we more than covered just about everything pretty well. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me online at CL Shoemaker. Literature with Charm is my website, or on YouTube at Biblical Bliss, or it's also known as Soothing Scriptures. But if you just type at Biblical Bliss, it should show up.
All right. And of course, I'm on Twitter at reviews_gun. I'm on Twitch at Smirking Gun Plays, where right now we're playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We also have the YouTube channel that I use occasionally called Smirking Gun Plays as well. Mostly just to try new things. On the channel, Smirking Gun Reviews, of course, you can find me here on hopefully mostly. I think we got Thursdays pretty much locked in here for Agent Carter. Fridays, when I can, we do the Boba Fett reviews, The Mandalorian, which we will have one up tonight. I'm going to stay up. I might be going to bed shortly so that I can get up at 2 a.m, watch the episode, and then I think I'm going to do just a quick live review. Well, Boba Fett is anyway. Of The Mandalorian. Then on Saturdays, we've got the Fandalorians over on D's Reviews at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. On Mondays, we've got His Dark Materials Season 2 reviews. And on Wednesdays, we've got Old Shield new reviews, where we're going to be doing episode 15 of Season 3 next week. Episode 14 just went up the other day. And wow, that's a lot of stuff. And more coming. There's more stuff coming.
And the Shield reviews that we're doing once a month.
Yep. And then and next month we've got season 2 of season 2 of Agents of Shield retrospective over on D's Reviews. I'm also going to be doing The Expanse season 5. Maybe on my channel, but for sure on Enchantment of Eternity with Mark over there, and D, and possibly Don Willie. I don't know how many of us are going to be over there doing that. There's a lot of things coming on the channel and other channels. So lots to look up. And before I forget, if you like this review, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. Otherwise, we will see you next week for more Agent Carter Season 1. We are at the halfway point. We've only got 2 more weeks, and we'll be done with Season 1. So make sure to tune in on Thursdays. Well, more like Fridays, by the time it's up. Have a great night, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye.